Okay, everyone, in this tutorial we'll be discussing and showing you how the grid technique is used with a photograph to a drawing. I have a 9 by 12 sheet of drawing paper here, and also I have a resource photo of a 6 by 8 photograph of a portrait of a face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this to fit exactly on this 9 by 12. So how am I going to do that? Well, this is a 6-inch wide by 8-inch tall photograph. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grid this every inch with my ruler. So around the perimeter of the photograph, not the paper, of the photograph, I'm going to take my ruler and make a mark every inch, like so. You have to be precise here, so all your parallel marks line up. What I like to do is I do one side and then I bring my ruler down and I begin the same way I did the top as the bottom of the photograph. I'll match those marks up and get myself some nice parallel lines. I'm using a marker pen here. That's not necessary. A regular pencil will work for being able to see your grid lines. Okay, so we have our vertical lines now. I'm just going to turn my paper and I'm going to do, again, 1 inch around the perimeter of the other two sides. And again, like always, I will roll my ruler down and get the opposite end. Sometimes people only mark one side and try to get parallel lines, and they can get some little twists and slants. So be careful and just make sure you're matching 2 points up and you'll accurately get a nice clean grid. So now we have 6 squares across and 8 squares down. So what we have to do is we have to have the same ratio on this larger piece of paper. Well, to grid this drawing paper, we're still going to get 6 squares across by 8 down. But on a 9 by 12, we can't go every inch because, well, that would make us have 9 squares across by 12 squares down. So what we're going to do is a little math. If I go every 1.5 inches, so that would be 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, and marks at 7.5, and I'll end up at 9. That's going to give us our 6 squares across. A 9 by 12 is 50% bigger than a 6 by 8, so we're going to make a drawing that's larger than the photograph. Not twice as large, but larger. So again, I'm going to match up my 1.5 inch marks on my 9 by 12. If you so happen not to have a 9 by 12 piece of paper, then what I'm going to suggest you do is do a drawing that is a 6 by 8, just like the photograph, and you do a sketch that's a little bit smaller. Hopefully you do have a 9 by 12, so then you can do this. If you have one twice as, like if you have a 12 by 16 sheet of sketch paper, you can get 9 by 12 out of that. So I'm just doing just like what I did in my photograph. I'm making 1.5 inch marks around the perimeter of my drawing paper. And again, this is a 9 by 12 sheet of paper, so that's why 1.5 inch marks work perfect here, because I'm just going to scale it up. And there we go. Lining that up, 6 across and 8 down. And there's 6 across and 8 down on my photograph. So now I'm going to move on to the next step, which is going to be drawing this. I have another video that you can see on some tips if you're having trouble drawing using the grid technique that you can view as well. Basically, you want to start where you feel most comfortable. And I have a hairline here that I want to start at. So I'm going to move into the correct square and move through there and match up my locations based on the squares on the grid. and that'll make sure I stay as accurate as possible doing this portrait. This exercise is about you getting an accurate layout of the facial features on a portrait, because if you're able to do it here, you'll have no issue doing it on the portrait that you choose to do in the future. What I look for in a sketch are the major outlines, the major details. I'm not really worried about really tight detail, like tight, tender details or like sculpted shadows. That will come down the road in the illustration. But getting a drop shadow or something or two can be helpful in just showing you that you're navigating across. So plot out points when you need to make sure that your imagery is where it should be inside of your squares. Constantly look back at your resource photo. That's your guide, and get your major line work done. Always self-evaluate, double check. If something does look off to you, check that area and the surrounding areas you already drew to see if something led you down the wrong path. Because everything works together in a drawing. If one part's off, it could affect a lot of other parts too. So we want to get to a point like this where you have a sketch layout, and then next class, as we work towards our true portraits that we'll do, we may go back into here and do some shading to build our skills up as well. Good luck, everybody.